B-A-R-B, B-A-R-B, bold, active, resourceful, proud.
50 plus so we've lived and learned.
Nothing can stop us now.
What respect that we all have earned.
Nothing can stop us now.
We're the ones who have built this land.
Nothing can stop us now.
Let's unite and we'll take a stand.
Nothing can stop us now.
Nothing can stop us now. Show the world that we're able and strong. Nothing can stop us now. Raise your voices and sing our song. B-A-R-B, bold, active, resourceful, proud. B-A-R-B, bold, active, resourceful, proud. Oh, yeah.
One of the ways to improve soil health is, at the top of the list, and it's not by accident, is to increase the organic matter in soil, right? So what we're looking to do is really trying to reintroduce our onion cuttings and stuff, and I even bought a little container of what I use at home back into the soil, and encouraging composting, ground cover. And when you do that, what you're doing is allowing for organisms to move in. I know not everyone is okay with little creepy crawlies, but guess what? God put them here on us for on the planet with us for a purpose. So one of the creepy crawlies that are even too small for you to see are the microbes, the enzymes, the bacteria that do a lot of the breaking down of the work, including the fungi. What you're doing when you're composting and when you're trying to improve soil health is that you're supporting the ecosystem that is made up of the various bacteria that interact with each other, and the various fungi that interact with the soil, with building up the soil matrix as they call it, which is the composition of the soil. And as we all know, we would see soils that are clumpy and gray and sandy and loamy, and the red ones and the green ones and all the different color soils. Well, when you're trying to improve soil health, you're addressing the presence of microbes and fungus within those soils. What would have been hit on earlier as well would be the use of biological-based fertilizers. Why? Because a lot of God's given creatures probably weren't designed to take on, and a lot of the man-made chemicals, pesticides that we throw at them, there's a whole ecosystem in which they balance each other out. But when you start applying certain chemically based pesticides, you create imbalances, and what happens from there is you are now affecting the soil health. You're not getting rid of those bugs. Actually, you're taking somebody out that is a vital worker within the soil. We have to, as John would have discussed as well, the intelligent use of vegetation within managed landscapes. We know about the effects of salinity and wind. If you live on many parts of Barbados that are exposed to high winds, and you go to plant a little fellow like this, and he's blowing, he doesn't seem to catch, doesn't seem to grow. Why? Because he suffers too much moisture loss. He has no wind protection, cannot grow to his full capacity. One of the things we talk about in soil health is about having mulch present to keep the moisture within the soil. So we say 100% ground cover 100% of the time. It's really quite easy. Grass cuttings, you can get your wood chips, but basically a lot of stuff will do. And those freshly trimmed branches, if you go and chip them up a little bit and cut them up a little bit with your hand clippers, you can then apply those. One of the things that, for those of you who are probably practicing putting in a few things into the ground, we talk about minimal tillage and retaining crop stubble. That is because the same crop stubble now helps to maintain the soil in its. We all know about water runoffs and so on. So depending on where you're growing and how you're growing it, you want to do that. And minimal tillage, because why? There are earthworms that live in there. My heart breaks every time I mistakenly hit one with the shovel. I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't, because he's probably a good worker, and he's like, why'd you do that to me for? Yeah, no, I said I can never reach them on the phone, but they're really great workers. They're really, really great workers. And then you use time control plan, rotational grazing, for those of you that may keep anything from, do you know chickens can graze?
Chickens take your Your earthworms as well.
Well, actually, the earthworms kind of stay their way out of the chickens. It's more the little mites and bugs and aphids that will show up and tend to be under the leaves and will make their way as they work their way across the garden. Chickens are actually very good, and we'll talk about this another time, but you can do something like a chicken trap to where you can control their movements. So you have a few chickens inside there, and they will pick that area clean of any bugs. Any unwanted bugs are going to now approach themselves to your whatever you're growing. And certainly one thing that I will advise you all to do is reducing the dependence on those costly, fossil fuel-based pesticides and fertilizers. And that's where compost is going to feature in grandly, because if you have healthy soils, you don't have to use as much compost, you don't have to use as much pesticides, and you certainly don't have to use as much fertilizer. One of the things that we all, more is better. No, if the plants have good soils, a good medium from which to grow out of, you will get good returns.
Show the world that we're able and strong. Nothing can stop us now. Raise your voices and sing our song. BARP, bold, active, resourceful, proud.
How to compost? Most important thing, find a site. Selecting a compost site is important for two reasons. You're going to be visiting there fairly regularly, and a compost pile is going to have a lot of organisms move in. For things that bacteria, which are going to do the majority of the back-breaking work in your compost piles, need the same things that we do. They need air, they need food, they need water, and they need shelter. Now the compost pile that you're building is actually going to provide that shelter. Then water. Water is going to be supplied by the rain. Please do not apply water from the taps. Not necessary. Let the rain fall. You will turn the compost. The carbon element of when we get into that, compost will hold water. So the idea is really to select the site first. So you're going to want to put it away from fences. You want to give yourself some space so you can go all around your compost. You want to be able to get at it from every direction. There's nothing worse than when you set up a compost pile right up against a fence, and what will happen is the critters that will move in will not differentiate between your wood fence and your compost wood. They'll go through all of that. Because for them, they're like, oh, thanks, boss. They're just glad you put it there. They would think that you did it on purpose. So you want to keep it away from fences and any wooden structures. I put that there specifically. So don't say that the guy from Italy, from Barbados, told you that he said, well, you keep it away from fences, but I'm going to put it up next to my wood shed. Please do not do that. Right? So keep it away from all wooden structures. And you're going to want to keep it in a shaded area. Why is that? You keep it in a shaded area because if you leave it out in the open, the compost pile will start to dramatically lose that moisture, that precious water inside there for the bacteria, especially in the dry season. And Barbados can tend to have some pretty long, brutal dry seasons in these last few cycles. And it's like, you're then what should have been your teeming compost pile is actually now a tinderbox that Ministry of Health has to come and knock on your door and say, excuse me about the tinderbox that you got outside in the yard. We don't want that. Dry, green, brown, wet. So you have vegetable waste, lawn clippings, fresh leaves, stalks, your general yard waste, especially when it's freshly cut, it's the green. I put the word nitrogen in green for a purpose so y'all can do the whole word association stuff. So all your freshly cut stuff, that little stuff that's at the bottom of the sink when you finish doing your wares, that little stuff that catches in that little thing in the middle there. What do you call it? The grate?
Strainer.
The strainer. There you go. When I think of a strainer, I think of lemons and when I make my lemonade. So the little strainer at the bottom of your sink, all that stuff. Now some of y'all might not like touching it, but my wife calls me for it. I'm like, I go in there with my hand bare, so like, yeah. In fact, here's a whole collection of it. No, there you go. Anybody want to smell it? Yeah? So, all right, so they're like, no, way too much close and personal. Yeah, so the first thing you have to do is lay down these big sticks. I said, well, okay, why? I was always asking my dad why, and he was like, go read. But the reason you do is because those big sticks, when you lay them down on the ground on an area like this. You can lay them down depending on how much you want to break your back. This whole room is to allow for air pockets once you start the layering process. That's why I was going to say, whether you do this in a small bin like this, because this is composting in here, you best believe that. It's composting in here. Now, I'm obviously not going to try and stick a 6-foot branch in here, but I'll scale it down to make sure I put some little branches in here to give me about this much. Little air pockets underneath there. Then I'll start the layering process as we go ahead. And as you layer them, what you've just provided, the first thing you've done is you've provided air, right? Just by laying down those sticks, you get your air cavity. Then you're gonna put down your alternate layers of carbon and nitrogen. So you've done your first layer of sticks, which is big sticks. They're dried up pieces of wood. You drag them from across your yard, and you put them all here in the area. That's already it's two things. It's carbon, and it's going to provide your air pocket, right? So obviously the next layer is going to go on top of that is a little bit of the wet stuff, freshly cut green stuff, your kitchen waste. You know, the gardener just came by and did all the lawn, and he left 2 nice bags of cut grass there for you. That is your nitrogen layer. You're going to look now to spread those all over, right? So they're going to land on top, which you guys know that if you have a bunch of big branches with big gaps on it, the first thing you're going to do is put some green branches across it. If not, if you sow the grass will go straight through those very big holes and land on the ground. So you kind of defeat the purpose of your air pocket. But you're going to layer them, and you're going to keep these layers. And this is for a pile, but the principle always repeats itself, whether you're doing it in a drum, in a small bin this tall. You know, you can get the little garbage bins about this tall. Same principle always applies. And as you put down, especially the layers, you're going to just apply just a little bit of water, and it's going to look like this. So you got your branches underneath, right? So this is the carbon layer right here, right, guys? No, that's your nitrogen layer. That's your nitrogen layer, right? And then you're going to put some more brown stuff. Then you're going to put some more nitrogen, and obviously you can now put like those mulch up shredded. You know, these fancy guys got the mowing machines that when it's done, it's just obliterated the grass. You can now put that maybe the second or third layer. That's my personal advice. Then you put some more drier leaves on top, and you keep layering that up. And yes, ma'am, you asked about the newspaper. Boom. There your newspaper comes in. Because why go to Carter's and buy an expensive tarp when all you got to do is just cover it over with some old newspapers? Hey, let's hear it for recycling.
One layer of newspaper over it.
You just want to keep a layer because now what you've done now is you've created your shelter. You've created your living environment for all your microbes, all the insects, the pill bugs, the millipedes, the centipedes. All right, just pretend I didn't say centipedes, but yes, centipedes are going to move in too. Yeah, everybody goes, oh, okay, no composting thing. Time out, you know, let's take a break. So now you have created your shelter. You've added water. They have air pockets underneath there. And Bob's your uncle, we're there. And this repeats itself whether you want to do it in a large drum, a 55-gallon drum, or those, you know, ever-present blue bins that, you know, substitute as garbage cans in Barbados. You want to do it in there? Perfect. I tell you, don't even chop the top off. They're one of the ones that you can get the black lid. Keep the black lid on, so what you can do is close that bad boy nice and tight, and then open it, put more stuff in there, close it back, and every now and again, just give it a nice kick, let it fall over, just let it roll. And then put it back up right. Right? Because then what you've done is now, once the process has started, you've started to mix the compost. Right? And now we're talking about maintenance of the pile. Because what we did was, step 3 was setting it up. So the whole kicking it over, that's now getting into the maintenance. I was like, what's maintenance like? I thought I signed up for a course of composting, and now I have to be here doing like, I don't know, maintenance like it's your car. Nope. All you have to do is continue adding the pile and maximizing the composting process, right? So after you set it up, you can let it sit for a while. I mean, for goodness sake, you got so many things to do. I mean, why go in? I'm not going to give you hard work. Do I look like a guy that likes hard work? Yes. All right, that could be true, but that's not the point. Besides that, the fact of the matter is is you set it up, and what you have to do is allow the insects to move in. You have to allow the bacteria to start activating and doing its thing. Because we are covered in bacteria in this room right now as we speak, even though we all just went to the bathroom and washed our hands. And it's the state of the world. It's the state of the world. Bacteria are, there's good bacteria or bad bacteria that do certain things and bacteria do other things. But the fact of the matter is, bacteria is on everything we eat, everything we touch. And what we are doing is now we are facilitating a certain type of bacteria, which in this case is aerobic bacteria, not the giant fonda. No. This is the aerobic bacteria, the one that like air. The anaerobic bacteria will be the one that you will most associate with that black moldy stuff that comes out from the drains when NCC comes around and cleans up the stuff, and it kind of smells like very, like danky, musty, weird, like not good. That is anaerobic bacteria, because even there's bacteria that will break down stuff even in those conditions. But we are working with the aerobic bacteria, which is, no, they're not going to smell body beautiful fresh, but they're all right. I kind of like them. Actually, I probably rival them for how they smell sometimes, but they're in this thing. They're in here. I have my aerobic bacteria friends in here. Like right now, I'm up here with about 10 to the 25, like trillion, bazillion, gazillion friends right here to my left and my right. Right, that have been doing the work for me. We've been working together for months. Thanks, guys. They're my friends here. And what we're doing is we're setting it up for them to start the work. That's why I tell Philip, I've spoken to John about this, is about, in these things you front load the work. So you do the work, you set up the compost pile, you set up the compost bin, but then you're working with nature and you're going to let her do a lot of the back-breaking work. I mean, would you like to be chewing your own food scraps and doing whatever bacteria do with it? No, that's you. You don't want to do our earthworm's work. Huh? Does anybody want to do it? I don't want to do an earthworm. I let him do his work. So after that, we're going to look for about another week or so where the idea is you're trying to allow as many pill bugs, millipedes, yes, a few centipedes, I hate to say that, move in to do their work. Why? Because all these guys are what we call detritus eaters. Termites are actually not bad, If there were no termites, I mean, we would have so many trees on the planet. I mean, there would be no space for us, right? So we need something. It's all when I spoke at the beginning of natural cycle, it's about the idea is that everybody has their purpose and place. All the insects have their purpose and place. We don't always know it, and sometimes they're a little bit of an inconvenience to what we are trying to do. You got your cabbage there, and all of a sudden the cabbage get eaten up. Well, guess what? Something was probably a little bit out of alignment. But the fact is, a lot of different these insects are going to move in. You're facilitating their work environment, right? And like I said at the bottom here, don't worry if you missed out. Like, oh man, I think I put the layer on top of the other layer, and then I put the newspaper in between instead. I think it was supposed to be on top. Don't worry. Mother Nature knows more than us. She knows a thing or three. So if you put the newspaper between every layer, trust me, that's going to disappear too, right? It's going to get broken down. Last but not least, go wild. Go wild with your finished compost. Do whatever you can with it. Put it everywhere you can. You will notice that compost is going to happen in your pile when you have it in your yard. One of the first places where you're going to see the material breaking down is around the edges of it. Right? Around the edges. As it's breaking down, it may have not gotten down to this fine stuff that we have here. Brought along 2 little bags to pass around. Man. You can pass it around?
Yeah, we'll pass it around. No,
just in case it's any spills.
Okay.
All right? That's for that side of the room. Let me see if there are any centipedes in here. Ooh, nobody, y'all are good. All of a sudden, y'all be like. As long as she says, as long as it's standing there. All right. We'll remember that. All right. So this is composted material. Well, you know this stuff already. Here you go. This is composted material, what it looks like. Here, please feel free.
Yes.
Right? And this started off as branches, half a tree,
All sorts of things.
Mine never,
all sorts of.
mine never looks like that. It never looks nice and fine like that.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You use a,
I can help you though.
you use a machine to.
You like that, Wink? I help you though.
You use a machine to.
No, ma'am.
You,
I use right arm and left arm.
not me. I'm an old lady.
Yeah.
That's a question that I wanted to be done.
Yes.
I've wondered at times if it would
I don't even
help
bother
the
to roll.
process if I put it in my chocolate before I put it in the compost.
As it starts to break down, and I'll show you a few things as well in regards to as it starts to break down, you will notice that you will see some stuff that should look more or less like this compost here, right? So you'll still have like a coconut branch. For example, people always say palm fronds. They're extremely notorious for taking forever to break down. And that's because Mother Nature made them that way for a reason. We all know about the coconut trees that they bend, but they don't break. Right? So palm fronds, all the constructions, there's something called linucellulosic acid. I know I was told not to use any big words, but I'm sorry, they're snoozers. But the fact of the matter is, those are the elements that make up the strands, those very strong strands of palm leaves and palm fronds. You know, when you take a palm frond, you go, you're actually tearing and shredding that 8 million times faster than Hurricane Ivan, Gilbert, and all them put together. Because you will notice that those are designed by Mother Nature with those long strands not to break. Right? But by the same token, you put down a palm frond within a compost pile. I've seen and observed very wonderful things. So you have a palm frond spread over, let's say, a compost pile as tall as this table. What it will do, depending on which way you put it, it'll either serve, if the little palm fronds are down like this, it'll serve to protect the heat and moisture when the sun passes every day and heats up your compost pile. Look, dry tissue. Here's a bit of an onion. What's this guy here? More onion. Like I said, I eat onions a lot. Right? Oh, look. Here's an orange that didn't quite make it. In other words, it didn't make it to my stomach. But as you can see, it starts to break down. Look, he steps back like, whoa, too much. But all of this starts to break down. And now, I'm not going to ask you to do this because I know not everybody's as adventuresome as I am. But when I feel in here, I can feel heat because that is being broken down. And so that's one aspect to it. And when I'm done, right, so when it starts to break down or when I've put too much kitchen scraps in here, right, I move some over to here. So this stuff is even more richer. Look at this bad boy. Look, I'll make a quick run. Look at that.
We got the strength and we got the might.
Nothing can stop us now.
We all believe in what's true and right.
Nothing can stop us now.
Come on.
Composting is vital because it will tackle various amount of issues that we have today in society with handling waste streams, and by the removal of organic material from our waste streams, what we will do is we'll create jobs, we'll be introducing material back into the natural cycle, and will allow for the reduction of use of chemical pesticides and fertilizers.
Active, resourceful, and proud. Raise up, we're boys. We're active, resourceful, and proud. Can sing a song. We're active, resourceful.
I'm often asked, can I do this at home? You most certainly can. You can compost on a small scale or on a large scale. There's there's almost zero startup cost. You can compost whether you live in a small house or a big house. Once you are consuming food, you can take part in composting, and the wonderful part is that you can also share the experience with, the rest of the family and friends, because we all eat food. So the idea is that what we'd be doing is when you are composting, you automatically now start to see your food scraps, not just as scraps, but as a resource. And once again, you'll be taking it out of the other waste streams. So one of the issues that we faced here in Barbados is regards to our waste collection. That's because a lot of the waste in Barbados is actually contaminated by the fact that people throw away their food scraps in with everything else that they have. So then it makes it harder further down the waste stream for it to be differentiated. It may not be well known that when you have a skip or a container or a plastic bag, in actual fact from everyone's garbage that happens to be mixing with food waste, that food waste is immediately just taken and disposed of and thrown into the landfill and no longer differentiated because it is considered contaminated.
Resourceful and proud, can't stop, we're small, we're active, resourceful and proud, we're boys, we're active, resourceful.
From my exposure to the project, I think it's fantastic. I think it's very important that in this modern era we take the time to share information about something that's so vital in regards to the environment, given that we do live on a small island, and by sharing that knowledge, something like the Better Life Gardening will allow people to become more active, become more aware of ways in which they can, for me personally, I'd say to compost, to grow organic fresh vegetables that are better for our health. Just the interaction is better for our communities. So I think it's a great initiative.
Raise your voices and sing our song. B-A-R-P, bold, active, resourceful, proud. B-A-R-P, bold, active, resourceful, proud. Oh yeah. Oh, we got the strength and we got the might.
Nothing can stop us now.
We all believe in what's true and right.
Nothing can stop us now.
Come on, stand up and shout out loud.
Nothing can stop us now.
We're bold, active, resourceful.